Hello there. I am excited to come here for a few minutes to talk about bridging this time between 2 months where we are talking about African American history and then we're talking about women's history. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, well, what am I going to do? What am I talking about? And I'm like, what am I talk about? I'm going to talk about I am Black female history, like live and in person. And I think we can say that for a lot more people because we're always trying to look back to something else as opposed to looking not just forward, but in the present for what's the history that's being made right now with what people are doing. And when you put that lens on, as opposed to trying to go figure out what you're going to learn from some a book or some experience prior to, and I'm all for that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I am a biography history nerd. I'll go scrambling down some stuff trying to figure it out in a hot minute. And I realized that in the experiences that I've had in my own career, in my, state where I live, I'm in Texas, have been here for a number of years. And I realized I'm like, there are some things that literally I've done that should go down in history books. And that's not being pompous. But I'm thinking about the experiences that I've had where I literally was the first to do it, both as a woman and as a Black person. And there are so many times where we can still say that, whether you're a woman in an industry that's still overly represented by men, or where there's just few women in it, or as a Black person. I mean, there's still the whole first person, and sometimes it seems like, man, when are we going to get past that? Well, we'll get past that when we don't have to worry about it anymore, and everyone has the ability to access um, the resources and the positions and all of that that will help people to help people to achieve positions and places, and it's just more diverse. That's what I'm getting to. More diverse, right? um and so I do think about that in terms of my own work, where man, there's so many different situations. I know that the biggest one, I will say, the biggest one is when I worked for a university system and I was hired in as a vice chancellor for government relations. And for anyone who follows higher ed or knows that structure, like you have universities, and then in some places, a lot of states or whatever, you have these systems. So it's where a bunch of universities come together under one helm, let's say, and they follow that direction. Well, I've already said I live in Texas. We're we're so big, and dare I say, the structure having not been well thought out years and years ago. So we have, what is it? At least six public systems, not including community colleges, also not including the private colleges. So we got a lot of colleges and universities and educational institutions in this state. And even though my system was one of the quote smaller ones in terms of um, the universities involved, as well as the funding, because that's really where it gets down to, like how much money you're driving through. Well, the point is, I I didn't have anybody to look up to as a mentor for what to do with this position because there had not been one. There were people I knew as assistants, and one of my mentors had been an assistant vice chancellor at a different system, and but I did not know of a Black person or woman who had ever served as the vice chancellor in this specific realm, leading the government relations strategy for their organizations. Now, since then, there has been someone at another system who was named that, which was quite honestly, I was shocked by it. Not by her; she was more than qualified. We had worked together in the legislature years ago, but because this system is so much bigger, is one of the largest ones in the state, um, and her predecessor is who I had worked with, and it was a male who had followed all the little chains, had all the connections and all the things. So it was just interesting to see and to know that it's happening and to remind people that it can be. And I think about how there were so many quote firsts while I was working in this space. And this is just in education, and dare I say, in higher education, right? So it wasn't that, but there I was also in education working for, you know, as a Black woman working for the first female commissioner of education, for K through 12, and coming up under that. I mean, there were all of these things going on that I really had not fully sat back to think about what the experiences were like and what they meant in those terms. And that's something that I'm going to have to do. I know I've said down through the years, there were some of my experiences that I would absolutely need to write about. And that's just because, there were some really difficult and challenging situations that we had to do things in an unconventional way to get it fixed, right? And that had not been done in state government before. And so I got to, lead that charge in one way. And that in and of itself. But this is from a different perspective of as a woman in a very male dominated space of politics and state government leadership, it's just like, what does that look like? And what has that looked like? And what has it meant for me moving forward and moving on? And, some of it's good, some of it's not so good. Because, there are people, there were people who absolutely were not happy about me being in that position, about me having the ear of my chancellor when it came to making decisions that didn't just affect my area, but also having the trust to be able to provide input on other areas as well. Right. And this is where things get a little dicey because, folks, and trust you me, I've got the stories about that where, you know, people get in what's the in I won't even say intimidated, but definitely aggravated about the fact that I had the skill sets to do not just my job but another. I'm a licensed attorney, always have been. And so there were other areas of the work that we were doing that I was pulled into because of my skill set. And there were folks who weren't necessarily happy about that. And absolutely were offended. That's what I was looking for. Offended that I could be able to make those decisions and be supported. And I distinctly remember having this conversation with a colleague who I was older. And here's the other thing, I was working, you know, the other vice chancellors in my system were all men who were all older than me by a minimum of 10 years. Trying to think about the youngest person, the next youngest person who was labeled as a vice chancellor. And he was in charge of construction. So, like, minimally 10 years older than me. All but one were white, but years, anywhere all the way up to, I don't know what, back then, 20, 25 years. Oh, I mean, so here I am. Here I was coming along, trying to do the work and being challenged um, at every corner, not just within my organization, but outside of my organization. That happened as well, because when meetings of the systems organizations came up and they were the lead government relations folks, I was the only woman. I was the only woman vice chancellor. Again, there were other assistant or associate vice chancellors, but they were not the final decision makers at their organization in that space. I was. And I remember clear as day one meeting where one of the other men was highly offended that I dared to represent the interests of my boss in a meeting where we were discussing issues and how they affected all of our organizations, and literally was so offensive in his response and attacking me that while people didn't, they were just, well, I think everyone was in shock, but literally there were people who came up to me afterwards to ask if I was okay. Like, it was that bad. It was that bad. And those are the challenges, some of which you'd prefer to, I won't say ignore, but forget, not remember, but they were real and they helped to shape, for the good or the bad, they helped to shape my um, leadership skills, my professional skills, and more importantly, what I care about, the legacy of what I leave behind and how I share it, which is why I wanted to do this particular video to talk about it. Because I think even still today, women need to know that you belong in all the spaces, that you can lead despite what someone might say or how they might treat you, and that you absolutely deserve to be there. We bust our butts. Are there bad apples? Sure, there's bad apples in every space, right? Um, More often than not, women and women of color in particular, we're fighting through. I'm not going to go with that cliche, especially women of color have to, do things two, three, four, five times as much. It's just because it's just true. I mean, like, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying there's no need for me to even say it because it just is. And to do so while maintaining your integrity and authenticity. And, dare I say, and this is even coming from a space and dealing with politics and all of that, dare I say that the authenticity piece is more difficult than the integrity piece. I think that's true for me, as a woman, because there are just certain things I was never gonna like. There are just certain things I was never gonna do. Right, that's my personal um, little walk the line thing, and there are certain things I'm never going to do. Like, I will quit first, I will report you. And remember, I'm a licensed attorney, so there are things from an ethical standpoint that could put my license in jeopardy, and I busted my butt earning that law degree, so there's no way I'm allowing that to happen. I mean, I've refused to do things for even for family members, because if it brought it into question. So that was the thing for me. But the authenticity piece, that I think can be more difficult for women because we get labeled as emotional or maybe not as knowledgeable and all these other lies, or maybe too aggressive, all that kind of crap, especially black women being, it's like the angry black women syndrome, which is just a bunch of crap anyway. Meanwhile, you've got men over there having the worst days of their lives, and it just being marked up to, oh, they're just, being men. No, not acceptable. So that's the piece I really want to make sure to remind women leaders wherever you are. I don't care if you're starting out in your organization and your leadership journey or whether you've been at it for 20, 30 years. Like, there are always going to be challenges because there are still so many spaces where women are not recognized or respected, um, for being in that space. Any place where there could be a good old boy kind of system, that means that women are still fighting to equal the playing field. And so during this Women's History Month, I really encourage you to do that, to think about that, and pursuing or looking at women who can be role models for you. Everyone doesn't want to be a role model. I get that. But find that role models, mentors, whatever, whether you're close to them or not, find someone who you can model your approach after, that syncs with you, that allows you to be authentic, who you are as a leader, as a woman leader. That's what I will say. Because we do make decisions differently, we do approach situations differently. And a lot of times, where we get bogged down is when we're being forced or we're feeling like we have to approach something from a more male perspective or quote traditional perspective, and that's what gets us wrapped up, right? So I've learned that lesson long ago, and learned to speak more freely and to encourage other female professionals and leaders to be more confident in who they are, as women in their professions, and to rest in that, right? To walk with ease in that. That, man, that is the goal right there. To do it with ease. That is fabulous. And so, yeah, there are still folks that I love to learn from. One of the ones I'm still learning from and watching is, former First Lady Michelle Obama, because watching, I think there was one of her podcast episodes that I watched a few weeks ago that opened my eyes to that even more so. Like, I had seen it, but to hear her actually express about how, here she was, a first lady, the wife of a sitting president with a lot of authority and experience and knowledge all of her own, still having moments of like questioning whether she was coming across in a way that was inauthentic to who she really was, and how that's something she's really focused on being able to do right now in these days. It's just fascinating. And so the reminder that we all still have plenty of time and plenty of opportunities to learn, um, continually. It's a journey. That's what I always like to say. It's a journey. And so, where are you on that journey? So, I encourage you to really dig dig deep and get engaged in some good reflection over the next 30 days, or whenever you're watching this. Just dig into that reflection of what it looks like to be, a female leader, and or to support a female leader, because it does matter to have that support to recognize that and to honor it, right? Because that's what helps to make it not be the quote issue that it sometimes still is. So there we are. Those are my thoughts. And looking forward to sharing some more. Which reminds me, please remember to hit the like button and to subscribe to this channel as we continue to grow it and move things forward. I'm excited about this, and to reset this channel moving forward, and also to remind you to celebrate who you are and to celebrate your wins each and every day. They do not have to be big, gigantic things. It can be the small things that really help to push us forward and to give us the confidence, the oomph that we need to make it yet one more day. So celebrate your wins, okay? Take care. Talk to you again tomorrow.